Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new episode, new week of CinemAddicts, episode 287. We are covering the week of Friday, March 28th, 2025. The movies that are being covered are The Ballad of Wallis Island, The Penguin Lessons, Audrey's Children, and Thank You Very Much. By the way, there's also a review of Bring Them Down. It's not a quote-unquote movie that's coming out on Friday, March 28th, but it's already been out. Bring Them Down. Bruce Purkey will have that review over at the CinemAttic. By the way, I love that movie as well. It's streaming. It starts streaming on MUBI. MUBI, MUBI. Thank you, MUBI, for giving us screener links to Bring Them Down. Okay. Great link. That comes out on Friday, March 28th. Streaming debut. Yes, Eric Holmes. How are you, sir?
Oh, yeah. Saw you guys posting in the thing and said that was really good. I thought we had a screener over, so I was looking for it. I'm like, I guess I don't have it, but I didn't know it was out already. Otherwise, I would.
It's so good, that movie. Yeah. And listen to Bruce's review for Bring Them Down. So what's going on with you?
I'm excited. I'll rewind that next week.
Okay, cool. So yes, rewind, Bring Them Down. Hopefully you will. Yeah, because that's a very intense movie. Very, very awesome movie. Now, but we have some other movies this week. Time is of the essence. Eric, just update on you. How have you been last 7 days?
Not bad. Gonna do some steaks again tonight.
Very good.
In about a half hour.
In about a half hour. So yeah, like we're out of here in about 30 minutes, 35 minutes?
Nah, I got about 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
I can push it a little bit.
Okay, I will say that's what she said here. Okay, so the ballot, I'm gonna start off right now. So all the niceties aside, thank you, Eric Holmes. We're under the gun. Let's start off with my number one pick this week over at CinemAddicts. There's a caveat to that though. Here it is. It's only coming out in select theaters on Friday, March 28th, but please look out for this movie in the coming weeks. In the first couple weeks of April, it'll have a bigger release. So March 28th, it comes out, but The Ballad of Wallis Island will be having a staggered release from the next several weeks. But thanks to Focus Features for letting me be able to talk about this movie, which unfortunately Bruce Purkey and Eric Holmes missed, and hopefully down the road they might be able to see it. Here's a plot synopsis for The Ballad of Wallis Island. The movie centers on Charles, played by Tim Key. He's an eccentric lottery winner. He lives alone on an island, on a remote island. And the only people that live on an island is Charles. He owns the home in the island, and another woman and her son. That woman has a sort of convenience store at her home where she gets products shipped into the island so Charles can buy them and use them at his domicile. So it's a very weird just set up in the beginning. It gets weirder though, because Charles, again, he is that millionaire who lives on that island with that other woman in the convenience store. But Charles, he hires this guy named McGuire Mortimer. Oh, McGuire and Mortimer. McGuire is, what was the name of yes, Herb McGuire, played by Tom Basden. And McGuire is a former he's currently a singer. He's a pop singer. He is a musician. But his days are a little bit not numbered, but they're not as he's not as popular as he was before. That said, McGuire, again played by Tom Basden, is a very important figure in Charles' life, and Charles hires McGuire to actually play for him on that remote island in Wallis Island. But the catch is, what McGuire doesn't know is his former lover and his songwriting partner and fellow collaborator, played by Carey Mulligan, she actually shows up on the island as well. Because, yes, Charles hired them both to play for him a concert, basically a concert for one, because he has really great memories of McGuire and Carey Mulligan's character. What is her name? I'm going to look it up right now on IMDb. She plays Nell Mortimer. So they were basically known as McGuire and Mortimer, and they were a very popular folk duo back in the day, not so popular that much now. And they are reunited for this one-off concert at Wallis Island with an audience of one that is Charles, played by Tim Key. What's interesting about this movie, there's a lot of many interesting things about this movie, is it was originally a short called The One and Only Herb McGuire Plays Wallis Island, which was released in 2007. And that short was directed by James Griffith. So now, some 17 years later, James Griffith, the director, comes back, as well as Tim Key and Tom Basden. This trio of friends, they made a short back in 2007, and lo and behold, years later, they come back to make an expansive version of the short, which is now called The Ballad of Wallis Island. And they also add A-list actress Carey Mulligan into the mix. And that's a very good win for all three of them, including Mulligan, who's very good in this movie. What's interesting about, okay, so Eric, what is your thoughts? Two singers who used to be lovers, they're reunited in the island because a millionaire hires them to do a concert in a remote island. What do you think is going to happen at the rest of the movie if you were the writer or you're watching? What do you think is good? A predictable movie? Give me your honest vibes on the
They do the show, and then they come back and record the rumors.
very cool. Yes, Fleetwood, very good Fleetwood Mac.
All I'm hearing is Fleetwood Mac biopic, but
That's very astute, Eric Holmes. But what's great is the Ballad of Wallis Island. I thought it was going to be one thing, and hopefully this will whet your appetite. It becomes a completely different thing towards three-quarter, or maybe almost more than halfway throughout the movie. There's a little bit of a slight shift as far as the temperature of what happens in the story, which I found really cool, because you get to see this Charles guy who's a millionaire. Even though he has a lot of money and he can retire comfortably on that island, there is a lot of depth to him, and there's a lot of sadness and bittersweet pain in his life. As far as the Maguire character played by Tom Basden, he's a guy who is not reliving the glory days. His glory days are behind him, and he's become more of a jaded musician. And as the movie unfolds, you realize why he's a bit cynical towards life. Carey Mulligan as Nell Mortimer, she's in a different place. She's married and she has other things going on in her life. The question is, will Mortimer and Maguire, will they reunite? Will their reunion be good? Kind of like that Fleetwood Mac reunion, which has its ups and downs, if you know anything about the Fleetwood Mac history. But what about the history of these two musicians on Wallis Island? Will that remote location lead to a reignition or reignite their love? Will Charles become friends with these singer-songwriters? What will happen? And it's a really interesting mystery in one sense, but it's a great, resonant, emotional, and just great drama. It's in theaters March 28th in select theaters, and then it'll actually expand in coming weeks. I'm giving this movie 4.5 stars. It's PG-13, 100 minutes. I really loved every single second of this movie. The final moments where you figure out what happens didn't make me really tear up, but it's a nice, very cool way to end a movie. So again, please if you're looking for some good music, there's original music for this movie, really good acting, and it's going to be in theaters. It's worth watching, because when you say, I forgot where this movie was shot, it says Wallis Island. The island itself, I can imagine on a big screen, will look very gorgeous as well. And plus, you have some really great acting from Tim Key, Tom Basden, and Carey Mulligan. Again, that is The Ballad of Wallis Island, 4.5 stars from me. Eric Holmes, what you got? You have this movie called Thank You Very Much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's it's quote, a provocative comedy. Wait, that's the provocative comedy. That is a description of Andy Kaufman and his approach to comedy, which is provocative, but it's a documentary about the late performer, artist, Andy Kaufman. It's in theaters and digital March 28th. It's directed by Alex Braverman. Eric, and currently it's 100% by the critics on Rotten Tomatoes. What is your take on this documentary?
That sounds about right. Yeah, I mean, it's a documentary about, and sorry about that.
No worries.
Documentary about Andy Kaufman. So I think mostly what you're going to get with this. I think where this one kind of excels, where other documentaries on Andy Kaufman might fail, is that they don't lean too much into the, is he dead? Is he not? Like, Andy Kaufman's dead. That, I have no, I'm not confused about that at all. But usually the documentary on Andy Kaufman, they would just lean into that, like the mystery of is he alive? Is he dead? And it's like, no, he's dead. Just let it go. But they do touch on that within because it just follows his kind of comedic style, and then they interview other people, uh, most of which are kind of annoyed by him, like by a lot. It's normally you'd watch a documentary, it's like I don't know, just pick someone. Stevie Ray Vaughan, he was the greatest guitar player ever, and oh, so talented. And then an hour and a half into the documentary, it's like, did we mention how talented Stevie Ray Vaughan was? He changed music, and he was like the only person that could ever hold a guitar, and everyone else got hit in the hand because they did not deserve to hold, because they had none of the talent that Stevie Ray Vaughan did. By the way, I like Stevie Ray Vaughan. I picked a name out of the hat. This is not that.
Oh,
This
cool.
this is yeah, he was kind of a dick. Like
Mhm.
because they would kind of so they would show how he would do like early on with the Mighty Mouse thing that
Yeah.
okay, that's cute. And then because like it was kind of cool seeing like his little performance art pieces because they seem kind of like it's just falling apart. And then at the end, like it just sort of comes together. It's almost like it's a family show, but you know what edging is? Uh, Never mind, it's a family show, but it's kind of like he's holding on to it, getting the audience to feel a certain way for a prolonged period of time. So then when he hits you with a punchline, it's extra funny. Probably a good example of that would be like Norm Macdonald's moth joke. If you ever heard that on Conan O'Brien, he just wastes a whole bunch of time, goes to commercial break, comes back, wastes more time, and then gets to that stupid punchline. But since it took so long to get there, it's like extra funny. So that's kind of his thing. And he wasn't always like trying to get people to laugh. He was trying to get people to feel uncomfortable or embarrassed or cringy or whatever. Sometimes a lot of times pissed off because they go through that whole deal where he was the woman hating wrestler,
Right.
the women, you don't belong in the wrestling ring. I'll beat any woman. And then they dive into that too because I guess I kind of suspected this, but I didn't know. A lot of the women he was wrestling were plants. And so they interviewed them and they talk about like the behind the scenes of what happened, him setting that up. So like this is less of a hey, let's talk about how great Andy Kaufman is and let's kind of talk about stuff that you probably don't know about. Let's see how the sausage is made, sort of. And more importantly, let's talk to his colleagues from back in the day and learn how much they freaking hated him.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a pretty good documentary and 5 stars. Is that
Okay.
it?
Okay. So, Eric, do you have to be a huge Andy Kaufman fan to watch it, or can you?
No, because he's interesting enough that it works. Like if you don't know who Andy Kaufman is, you probably watch this going, how the hell was this guy like a thing for so long? But and that's kind of another thing the documentary touches on. It's like even the people that didn't like him, they're still kind of wrestling with that. It was like Danny DeVito seemed to not like Andy Kaufman at all.
Wow.
And
Okay.
then they had what's Kramer,
Michael Richards. Michael
yeah,
Richards.
Michael
Is
Richards.
that right? Yeah.
So they had that whole scene where Andy Kaufman came on Fridays, the Saturday Night Live knockoff,
Yeah.
and there was that scene. Andy Kaufman had the first line, and he just sat there and stared at him. And Fridays is live, so the
Mm.
other the other actors are talking about how like, dude, like he locked us in. Like we see what he was trying to do, doing his whole make people uncomfortable thing, but we didn't agree to this. And like Michael Richards is getting pissed out. Like he goes, grabs the cue cards and just like slams them right on the table and sits down. And but like so you have someone like Michael Richards is like you can tell at that moment he was annoyed by him, but then like they're talking to him, it's like I think I kind of get it. Like I didn't like it at the time, but like I get it. And then there's like Danny DeVito who's like just annoyed with him throughout. Like I get what he was doing, but I also hated it. And
Were
so
you
yeah,
surprised by some of the candid takes on this documentary? I guess because
I not that they exist. I was surprised they put them in a documentary
oh,
because with a
okay.
documentary like this, they usually don't. It's kind of like that Chasing Amy.
Oh, right.
When they got that second interview with Joey Lauren Adams, like documentaries are usually like the first interview with Joey Lauren Adams.
Yeah.
This is like the second documentary or the second interview with Joey Lauren Adams, where it's like, all right, we got the fanfare out of the way. What do you really think? And then you hear it, and it's like, oh, hey.
So that's
So
good. So this movie is not fan service documentary. This is a
no,
very
no.
okay.
If anything, and it's not a hit piece on him either. It's just kind of like
Okay.
there's some people that kind of saw what he was doing and appreciated it, and some people that saw what he was doing appreciated it but hated it, and some people that didn't get it at all and hated him for it. And it just runs the gamut.
Okay. Wow. That I want to see this now. Thank you very much, Eric, for watching. Thank you very much. This
You're welcome very
documentary,
much.
yeah, 5 stars
I
from
came to save the day.
you did save the day in theaters and on digital March 28th. Currently, Rotten Tomatoes 100%. And like Eric said at the beginning of the review, it's about right. So that is thank you very much. Directed by Alex Braverman. Check it out. Let us know if your thoughts on this documentary. A couple more films. Do you know Steve Coogan? Eric Holmes, have you seen him? He was movies in The Trip to Italy, he's been in a whole bunch of movies. If you look at his Stan and Ollie, he played Stan Laurel.
Um,
Very good actor.
oh, the British guy.
Yeah, yeah, Philomena. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
seen him before. So, yeah, yeah. So this movie, it's inspired. The Penguin Lessons is inspired by the true story of a disillusioned Englishman named Tom Mitchell. It's set in 1976. He goes to Argentina to become an English teacher in Argentina, and he's expecting to just cash a paycheck, stay in Argentina, lay low for a while, teach some students some English, and everything will be fine. The catch is, though, in 1976, Argentina, there's a lot of political unrest in the area, and people are on edge. What happens is things get so on edge that the school takes a break from schooling for about a week. And during that week, Tom Mitchell, again played by Steve Coogan, he goes off with a fellow teacher, and they go off on a very just relaxing trip to neighboring Uruguay. And in Uruguay, Tom Mitchell, he meets a woman and they dance and they have a good night dancing and going to the beach. Then on the beach, Tom Mitchell sees a penguin with oil on its body. And trying to impress the woman, he takes the penguin back to his hotel and he and the woman clean the penguin up. Okay, so initially Tom Mitchell is cleaning the penguin to what is he doing to the penguin? Why why do you think he's
Don't ask me.
don't family
Should
show?
have said oiled penguin. My mind
Yeah,
went
he's
somewhere
cleaning
else.
basically it is a family show. So he's cleaning the penguin
I bet
in
he was.
hopes.
I bet he
What?
was.
I bet he was. Right. Family show in hopes of hopefully currying, let's just say family show currying favor with this woman. Does it work? I'm not going to tell you if the penguin situation works, but the bottom line is the next morning she's gone because who knows, maybe it might be a one night stand, maybe not. And he's left with a penguin, a clean penguin who owes him his or her life. The penguin realizes that this kind man, this Tom Mitchell person, saved his life. And the rest of the narrative deals with how Tom Mitchell, he's initially begrudging the fact that he has to take the penguin with him because the penguin will not leave his sights, will not let him go. And it's a series of mishaps which eventually lead Tom Mitchell and the penguin to leave Uruguay, go back to Argentina, and the penguin ends up becoming Tom Mitchell's roommate in his apartment. The apartment is set right on the grounds of the school. So the penguin lessons, you get to know it's predictable because you realize, well, you put a penguin in any room, I think it'll light up a room. Hopefully, if you like animals, right? I don't know if you saw a penguin, you'd be okay with it, Eric? Would it?
Just make sure there's no kids in there.
Right. Oh, well, there's a lot of things that happen in the penguin lessons regarding the penguin. And also this movie co-stars Jonathan Pryce. We all know him from Monty Python and Brazil, and iconic actor. He plays the school's headmaster. And it's exactly what you'd think. What do you think the penguin lesson is going to be? Like with penguin in school?
Greg, to be honest, I can't get that stupid, dirty
Okay.
joke out of my head. So every time you
Okay,
say penguin, I'm thinking of something else.
Okay.
But I imagine ends fine for everyone and
Well,
everyone's happy.
that's an interesting thing. Okay, because I mentioned it's set in 1976 and there's a lot of civil, social unrest, political unrest in Argentina. There's a little bit of that in the Penguin Lessons as well. There might be people who would have just wanted a feel-good Penguin movie. They're not going to completely get it. There's a lot of depth to this movie. It's based on a true story. It's based on the memoir by Tom Mitchell, and it's adapted by screenwriter Jeff Pope. Jeff Pope previously wrote scripts that starred Steve Coogan. The movies, these three movies I've all enjoyed: The Lost King, Stan and Ollie, and Philomena. If you really like love Steve Coogan and his previous collaborations with writer Jeff Pope, you're going to enjoy The Penguin Lessons. The movie currently has a 67% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, rated PG-13, running 110 minutes in theaters March 28th. I really enjoyed this movie. It had me in the feels. Not as had not did not make me cry buckets like Bob Trevino likes it, but very few movies do that to me. I hope, by the way, I hope people are watching Bob Trevino likes it as we're recording this.
Oh
But
yeah.
The Penguin Lessons, again, worth watching. Really enjoyed this movie. Really good drama, and I really was interested to see a lot of the chapters of Tom Mitchell's own personal life unfold within the confines of The Penguin Lessons. A memorable film. 4 stars for me for The Penguin Lessons. Our final movie is Audrey's Children. Eric and I saw this movie. Audrey's Children tells a story, untold true story of British physician Dr. Audrey Evans. Dr. Audrey Evans is played by Natalie Dormer, best known for her work in Game of Thrones. And she was in another movie that we all enjoyed. I'm going to pull that up in a second. But again, Natalie Dormer plays Dr. Audrey Evans. In 1969, she was the first female chief of oncology at the renowned Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Hospital of Philadelphia is known in the movie, at least, as CHOP. So Audrey's
She,
Children.
real quick,
Yes,
she was in The Wasp. I think that's the movie we were talking about.
she was so good in The Wasp. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, we loved her in The Wasp. But yeah, it's what you think it's going to be: a medical drama about cancer at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And you get to figure out how British physician Dr. Audrey Evans made an impact on just the battle against cancer, also advocating for the kids who are in that hospital for them to get better treatment for their respective cancer diagnosis. And yeah, I don't even want to say what she did because I don't know, Eric, should we even say that? Because that might be a spoiler. Would it be crummy for us to say all of the things that she did because that would spoil people's enjoyment of the movie? I'm gonna let
I don't think so. I mean, it might be a cool thing at the end, or it's like, oh, cool, she did that. I didn't know, but
Yeah, okay.
I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Well,
I mean,
let's
it's a big deal that she did that, but it's not a big deal in terms of where the story's going.
well, where the story's going to what Eric is saying is it deals with Audrey Evans. She is trying to fight for a more just aggressive treatment for cancer. She's met with a lot of pushback because in hospitals there is a lot of or like with any kind of institution, there's a lot of bureaucracy, and she tries to go a couple of steps further than she can go because she perseveres through all that red tape. See, okay, Clancy Brown, we know him from The Shawshank Redemption, a whole bunch of other movies. He plays her boss, C. Everett Koop. C. Everett Koop hires her, but unfortunately, he's the leader of the hospital, but he gets a lot of pushback from her, and a lot of the movie has them having going loggerheads over. He's saying, "Hey, you got to do your situation in a certain way," but she wants to skip a couple of steps because she knows time is of the essence, and that's understandable. So you get to see both points. Also, there's Jimmy Simpson, actor Jimmy Simpson. He plays Dr. Dan D'Angio, and he plays a sort of a collaborator with Dr. Audrey Evans. He initially is hesitant with working with her, but then as the narrative progresses, you see maybe possibly he might be a very important piece in furthering her research in cancer or furthering her advocacy for Audrey's children. Eric Holmes, your thoughts on this movie? I just wanted to say this. This is a medical drama that I thought it would go one way, but the fact that it really shows some of the maybe missteps or mistakes or just the situations, it doesn't portray Dr. Audrey Evans in a very shiny, angelic light. It portrays her
No.
in a human light, which I really appreciated. Eric, apologies for blabbering all this much. Your thoughts on Audrey's children?
Well, so you mentioned that she was how did he put it? She did something for children, like
Advocate. She was an advocate.
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 I don't know that she was. At least that, I mean, I'm sure the actual person was. I didn't get that from the character. I got the
Okay.
character was constantly getting in her own way. But like for instance, there was that scene where they snuck into that building and they're trying to be real discreet about it. And then she's like, they see a bunch of people. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go talk to him. And Jimmy Simpson's like, no, what are you? And then of course that blows everything. Like she's
Yep.
got so many things. I'm gonna give this cancer treatment to this kid. Like that's like you.
Yeah, you're gonna not follow protocol. You're not
Yeah,
following.
I
Yeah.
I understand the time is of the essence, and you want to do that, but it's one of those things. Like if I just throw a bunch of drugs in a kid and it works, then I'm a hero. If it doesn't, I'm a murderer. Like
Right.
like so the way her character is kind of portrayed in this is like she's kind of flying off the handle on a bunch of stuff, and and the cool thing about this movie is that there's a reason that she needs to do that because there's
A
certain
hundred
things
percent.
that she just has to break through the wall because no one's going to let her in because she's a woman because they do play with that. I do like I do think this kind of handled that sort of thing a lot better than say like Hidden Figures.
Okay. Yeah.
Because like with Hidden Figures, it's like, oh, we're black. Well, you can't do that because you're black, and then that's like the whole movie. And they didn't really focus on the science of what they did because the women that's about they did like extraordinary things, but the movie doesn't lean on that. It leans on the focuses more on the oppression they had, which is fine. But this movie did that too. And they also take time to get into the science of what she does. And then the hardship she had to go through and how that interplays with, you know, what she's trying to accomplish in a short amount of time.
Eric, did you find this movie to be a little bit too weepy or over sentimental? Because I didn't. I thought it was did.
It started off that way that, oh, you can't bring animals in here. It's like, well, here you go, bring them there. And then just like, skips off. I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of those movies. But that went away pretty quick. And like when they started getting into like the science of what she's doing, or they had like the not really courtroom scenes, but they kind of were courtroom scenes
Yeah.
where they're like going back and forth, like explaining like what's going on. So you get like a lot of information like that. And I understand for some people that's like watching paint dry, but for me that's catnip.
I thought that would be watching paint dry for me, and it wasn't. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's good writing or just good acting. Maybe both. It just was done well.
I mean this has a lot of the same stuff. This has a lot of the stuff in it that I love about courtroom dramas. The back and forth, the different points of view. I think her character was a little cartoony in her aloofness, but overall, pretty good. I don't know how accurate it is. Like
Yeah.
I wonder if someone that knew Audrey Evans would like watch Natalie Dormer playing not her performance, but her playing Audrey Evans and like how careless and dangerous she's being. I
Right.
wonder how many people would watch this going, no, no, she would have,
Or maybe she wasn't as hard-headed as portrayed, or maybe that was for dramatic effect, or maybe she
yeah.
was a lot more accountable for her actions. That's sort of inferred in the. No, it's a movie.
Actually, they did take that because like towards the end, like I think it was Jimmy Simpson. It was like, are you ever going to take account for anything you do? And then just kind of stopped her in the track. So it's like that the movie knows this is a thing, and so it's not like playing it off and then just ignoring it. But yeah, I don't know how accurate it is, but I liked how it played out, and I like the back and forth.
And so
It's throwing ideas out there, and it's not a black and white issue. There's a lot of gray area, and the movie plays with that. I really enjoy that.
100%. There's a situation regarding Audrey Evans. She sees a house in Philadelphia and she has an idea about what to do with this house. We're not going to get into what the house becomes or what it doesn't become, but it's indicative of what her initial actions to that house are interesting. But then you see those decisions play out methodically up until the end, which is awesome. So we're going to leave that a secret, what happens to that house and how that affects. But I
Well,
was
actually, that scene with the house that threw me off because it's like that's it. That whole scene right there was kind of isolates kind of her problem.
right. No,
I want to buy the house. Why am I not going to sell it to you? cool. There's millions of other houses. Just find it. Like, why does it have to be that one?
You're right, but it's one of those things where she had the right idea, but because of the protocol, it was a weird. Well, yeah, that's that house the way it plays out. It plays out in very good fashion towards the end of the movie, and we'll get to that. But no, we won't get to that. Eric, you got to get to work. Your thoughts, your final thoughts on Audrey's Children and your rating.
This was really good. I'd seen, I mean, it's 4 stars. It felt like it was going to be.
A movie of the week.
Look, people love hidden figures. That's fine. I hated that movie. This felt like it was going to go down that route, and it ended up, you know, going somewhere a lot more interesting. That has a lot more to say, and I mean, we're talking about Audrey's children.
Yeah.
What can you say about hidden figures? I agree. Racism is bad, but is it bad? Yes.
Right.
Audrey's cool. Children. Well, that's the end of that conversation. With Audrey's children, it's got that gray area that feeds the conversation.
Right. And what's interesting is this is not a spoiler, but in the hospital, the workers in the hospital, at least the way it's portrayed in Audrey's Children, everyone's trying to do a good job. Everyone is trying to do the best by the effects of medicine, of protocol, most importantly, the children.
And when Audrey gets in trouble, like you're kind of, well, sort of on her side, but like when she gets in trouble, you can sit there and watch it. Like the person or the group of people that are going to come down on her, you kind of, it's like, dude, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, Audrey, I love you, but they're not wrong.
It's some really good sequences. Again, Audrey's Children may seem on the surface some kind of movie of the week, medical drama that you saw. Maybe Eric and I were.
I changed my score. It's 4.5.
4.5. Yeah. Look, I was going to go with 4. I'm going to go 4.5 too. Well acted, well written. Also, Eric, you and I forgot to mention the story itself is worth learning about. I hate to say it. I hate to say movies are educational, but it's really good to know about this.
We brought this up. I don't know that this is the medium you want to learn the actual story, because I don't know how close this is to it. Right. But I think as a movie and as a
entryway, right? An entryway to her life.
Maybe
as a primer.
I just like the conversation that this movie would kind of inspire. I don't want to go out on, I don't want to put my neck out there and say, oh yeah, if you want to learn about, Audrey Evans, this is the way to do it, because usually not. And it feels like this might not be the best. Yeah, it's a good movie, presents good conversation. I don't know that I wouldn't want someone to watch this expecting this to be a documentary.
Okay. Well, Eric, do you mind on our edits and our CinemAddicts, only our CinemAddicts listeners listen to this, do you mind if I improperly edit your thing and say Audrey's Children is a 100% way to actually present the life of Dr. Audrey Evans? Hashtag Eric Holmes CinemAddicts movie blurb.
As long as the edit is completely like chopped and it's like obvious, then
we'll do.
But yeah, I always get weird about that. Like anytime you do a movie about someone, like there's like the Weird Al biopic is obviously horse crap. But like, if you're doing something about someone real and people are gonna see that as real, I like to say you don't have to. You can make a biopic and make it your own, tell a different story. That's why I hesitate to say yes. This is the way to learn about Audrey Evans. The way to learn about Audrey Evans is look her up and read about her.
That's it.
Do all that.
And what's great about Audrey's Children is it's a way you watch the movie, and then if you were so inspired, you can start reading about her. And let's be honest,
you absolutely should. Like,
you should.
The stuff she did was amazing.
Guess what? This also, if there's a documentary on Dr. Audrey Evans, guess who's watching it? I'm gonna watch it. Okay, so it's not gonna detract from the movie watching. So, anyways, that's it. 4.5 stars for Eric Holmes. 4.5 for me for Audrey's Children. Bruce Purkey's coming up with a review of. Well, he has a recommendation for this movie called Sing Sing, which highly praised from last year.
Heard of it?
Yes. Of course you heard of it. You never heard of it. Okay. And then Bring Them Down, which, by the way,
never heard of that either.
A movie that.
What are movies, Greg?
I don't know what movies are. Eric is actually in this weird sort of mental circle jerk right now. By the way, it's a family show. When I said circle jerk, he's got to go to
The
work.
band, the punk band.
He's yes he's forgetting movies right now because right now he's about to cook steaks and feed so many people in his wonderful over Skybox Lounge. So finally, before we go, Eric, final thoughts.
Yeah, it's another great week.
It's
Banger
great.
season is among us.
Banger season.
Oh, I should mention. So we were supposed to watch Stacy Attack of the Schoolgirl Zombies.
Yes.
There
Brian
was
Smith.
a
Sorry.
YouTube. I think Bruce got to it,
Yes.
but there's a YouTube link, and I was gonna watch that not last night, but the night before, and that YouTube link's dead.
Right.
And then there's you can find it on Internet Archive database, I think.
Okay. Hopefully.
I tried to watch that last night through there, but it's not subtitled. And there might be a way to get the subtitles on there. I don't know. So if I can find a way to watch it, I'll, we'll come back to that. But at the moment, it's not available as far as I can tell.
That was our Patreon assigned pick for this month from Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith, our apologies from Eric and my apologies for not getting to it. And because that link's not around.
Because it looked awesome.
It looked awesome. But the good news is our buddy Bruce Purkey over at the CinemAddicts will review it pretty soon. So anyways, here is Bruce Purkey. Oh, by the way, Patreon for April, we are covering the year 2015. Eric and I just recorded our Patreon for this month. We covered Amelie and Mulholland Drive. And of course, Bruce Purkey covered both those movies as well. Listen to this month's Patreon because Bruce is a huge fan of David Lynch, and his Patreon will be up very shortly. I will combine them and put them up in a few moments for our Patreon members. And for Patreon, please, $5 a month, catch all for our CinemAddicts community. If you can, that'd be great to support us. But you guys are supporting us just by listening to the show. Eric Holmes, cook those steaks. Get out of here. All right.
Put some
Bruce.
A1 sauce on it.
A1 sauce. And
well done.
Well done. All right. And here's Bruce.
Welcome to the CinemAttic, the attic of cinema. I am back to give you a few reviews today. We've got not as many as normal, and once again, whenever that is the case, usually when that's the case, I should say, that is because it's a week that we are doing a Patreon recording as well, and that is the case this week. This week we are doing a Patreon for 2001. That includes Mulholland Drive, and it includes Amelie. Both are rewatches, and you might not be surprised, but they are both pretty fantastic movies. But we'll get into that in the Patreon. During the Patreon, also, I'll go into some trivia about both movies. And also, we have a lot of other little details about the year 2001. So one of the perks of Patreon is that every month we will do a review of a couple movies from a certain year. And then that same week, we add one movie to our regular podcast episode from 2001 in this case. And that movie is on this week's podcast, and that is the movie called Stacy, Attack of the Schoolgirl Zombie. And I forgot who mentioned it. They probably already said, so hopefully they did. Hopefully they gave credit to the Patreon person who suggested that movie, because it's a movie I've never heard of before. But we'll be talking about that in this episode right now that you're hearing about. And in fact, Greg and Eric have probably already talked about it, but I'm going to talk about it as well. As well as that, I'm going to be talking about a new movie coming out called Bring Them Down. And I'm going to have a recommendation for a movie that just dropped on streaming on Max, and that is a movie called Sing Sing. All right, and that is the movies for this week. Just to let you know on the Patreon, if you are interested or curious, along with the monthly episode for a particular year that we pick, we also get early drops of all of the shows. So you'll get full drops of the podcast before it goes out to the rest of the world. Greg usually adds other little things in there like spoilers. Sometimes he doesn't edit it as much. You get kind of more of a raw version of it. And that gives you some incentive. It's $5 a month. Full access to everything extra that we might have. He also puts a lot of different interviews and things on there. And a lot of the stuff is available to everybody as well, but it just gives you a nice little one-stop shop if you're interested. If you're not and you just want to come and check us out this way, totally cool. We love to have it, and we love to hear from you, and we love the fact that you are listening and occasionally watching us. Good Lord, I'm sorry for you, but okay, great. Here I am. It's your funeral, person. But anyway, let's get to the movies for this week because they're not a lot, but there are maybe pretty interesting ones. So we'll see. First up is the new movie coming down, Bring Them Down, by Chris Andrews, director, starring some people you might have heard of before, at least a few of them. As Michael, you have Christopher Abbott. As Jack, you have Barry Keoghan. He's got a lot of praise and a lot of work lately. You've also got Cole Meany, which you might also recognize. He plays Ray. And then as Caroline, you've got Nora Jane Noon. And this is a little Irish movie. Irish movies can get pretty intense sometimes. This is no exception. So I'll give you the basic setup of this, which probably you're hearing now for the second time, but it starts out with Michael, so the Christopher Abbott character, and Caroline, Nora Jane Noon character, and they're driving in the car with their mom, and they're kind of racing away. And you find out quickly that their mother, well, let's put it this way. The two are not siblings. The two are, girlfriend, boyfriend. They're girlfriend, boyfriend. Michael and Christine. And they're in love, and they're with Michael's mom in the car, and Michael's mom is leaving Michael's father. She reveals this while they're driving along, and he intends, and he kind of freaks out, and he starts driving faster and faster and faster, and then there's a wreck, and that's like the cold open. Splash forward to years later, the mom died during that crash, and you don't really know all of the details, but you get the feeling that Michael either went to jail for it, or he just went to exile, or he left because he was, shunned by the family, or he felt so terrible, or he freaked out. Whatever the reason was, he never ended up with Christine. She ended up marrying another guy. His father has just stayed back, which is called Meany. His father just stayed back running the sheep farm in Ireland, and he was away for a while. And the beginning of the movie is he's back now. He's back on the farm, working with his dad. He's kind of just dealing with life. They don't really get into that historical moment of the first few seconds of the film, other than it's looming over everything. It's kind of this pain and this specter of what happened way back when that kind of colors every interaction and relationship throughout this movie. So it's an important context, even if it's not important, like, I guess, plot wise to the rest of the goings on in the movie. It really colors the way the characters kind of have some built-in emotion just right out of the gate. The basic setup then from that point forward is you've got two neighboring farms that kind of hate each other, and essentially this becomes kind of a feud movie where the Christine is basically next door, and she's not, like I said, she's not anymore the boyfriend girlfriend with Christopher Abbott's character. She has a new husband. They have a son. The son is Barry Keoghan, and they are trying to do their own thing. They're trying to, start developing the land. They're going to try to start building stuff, trying to make some money different ways. Meanwhile, Cole Meany and Christopher Abbott are just kind of making do as sheep farmers. But at the beginning of the movie, Christopher Abbott's up in the hills, and he notices that two of the rams from their herd have gone missing. And he goes over next door. He sees Christine there. There's a very awkward, tense, kind of momentary conversation with them, kind of like two long lost lovers who have seen each other, but they lost it. The time is gone, but you still feel there's that tension, and there's that, like, what could have been between them. But at the same time, his main point of being at the farm is what's happened to our rams. And Barry Keoghan says, "Oh yes, they died. I found them dead. They were in our property, and dragged them away, and we threw them in our, call it a slurry, which is basically when the animal dies, they throw them in this thing, and they essentially dispose of the carcasses." Lo and behold, later on, and this is the last spoiler I'll give, lo and behold, later on at a market for sheep and rams and so on, Michael Abbott's there, so is Barry Keoghan and the other family, they're there. And the Barry Keoghan's family is selling the rams that are Michael Abbott's dad's rams. And that is a problem. And so goes forth escalating tensions, just simmering, seething tensions between these two. And if this works for you, which it does work for me, it's about these seemingly small decisions that are made out of spite and anger and pettiness from neighbors, and how those will breed another escalation, which will breed back another escalation, breed back another escalation, and how they just keep mounting and mounting until things just become, well, let's just guess. You can guess. They might become pretty extreme. I'm not going to say exactly what happens. That alone is a pretty interesting movie. And in a lot of ways, I was saying too, and this is kind of a cliche to say this, but I think it's really true here. It's modern day times. This is not some old timey Irish folk tale, but it plays out a lot like a Western. You could imagine this being ranchers in the 1800s in the Old West, and how it could escalate when, some of their cattle got rustled or something, or the, horse got stolen, that kind of a thing. It really has that kind of feel, but it's in Ireland and it's with sheep. And the things that happen, I mean, I won't say they're super disturbing, but it especially if there's violence towards animals that bothers you, don't this is not the movie for you. This will definitely get to you. But I feel like in this movie it's absolutely justified because it's kind of the point and the way that they're making the point against each other in this movie. Another thing that's great about this movie is there's an interesting structural thing in it where it's not exactly Rashomon, where you have it's not like a single event that you see from three different angles or whatever. That's kind of the classic Rashomon thing, right? But it's similar to that in the sense of it's like one of those movies where you go to a certain point in the movie and then you backtrack and you go back to that other point in the movie from the other side. And in this case, you're doing it from the side of the one family up to a certain point, and then you go from the side of the other family and then up to a certain point, and then you have a little bit of a denouement after that, like where does that final thing lead to? I think this movie's pretty darn great, especially if you like I said, that's kind of these seething, very, very deadly serious kind of westerns. I think it has that vibe in a lot of ways, but the modern setting I think works as really well as well. Great acting throughout. Some of our best indie actors doing indie actor work, doing these small budget movies that they can really sink their teeth into. And it's a pretty great movie. I think this is going to be a hidden gem for a lot of people, but I thought it was pretty darn good. I'm going to go 4.5 stars for this movie. Why not five? I'm borderline on it. I think the only thing that leaves it from being from a five to me is that the ending does feel a slight, and I'm talking a very slight letdown. Like, I feel like things get to such an extreme level of tension in this movie, you kind of almost expect there to be more of a big, bravura ending. I kind of appreciate they did not do that. And I think what they did in the movie is absolutely works for the narrative that you're being shown. It works for the characters, so it's not like it's inappropriate. It's just that you've kind of felt like you were leading to something even bigger. But that's a very minor quibble for a very, really good movie. One that, like I said, I think it's going to just get lost. I think Greg mentioned, I didn't look at the Rotten Tomatoes. I think he mentioned that the audience score was really low, but the critic score was pretty high. I can kind of get that in the sense that you got to be in a mood for a movie like this. This is not a crowd pleaser type of movie. This is a pretty dour movie. And if you're not down for that, this might not be, your cup of tea. And for the average kind of broad audience, this may be not the kind of thing that they're looking for in their entertainment. Although if you are, like I said, if you're into like indie dramas or small movies that have some real punch and really good care taken with them, this is a great movie. All right, moving on. The movie that was suggested, which once again I did not write down who suggested it, sorry about that, guys, was Stacy, Attack of the Schoolgirl Zombies. This is directed by Neo-Yuki Tomamatsu. I think I got pretty close on that name. This is also from 2001. This is a very odd movie, and I tend to use the movie weird, the term weird too much or something like that, but it is pretty weird. This is in a kind of a strange subgenre of Japanese horror-esque movies. These movies they made in the late 90s, early thousands, There's a whole bunch of them, like Tokyo Gore Police and Meatball Machine. These kind of ultra gory, kind of very actiony, over the top, lots of practical weirdness. There's weird again. Uh, you get a lot of that in some of these Japanese horror movies from the era. You also have a bunch of like super classic horror movies from the era, Pulse and Cure and Ringu, and you can go on and on. But this is more of the gonzo variety from that era. This is also of the era where you have, along with, really well produced, movies in quotes, you have some of these movies that are just like they're like look like they're just shot on video, very, very low budget, very cheap productions. The acting is suspect at best. The effects are practical and okay, but you're also in the era where Evil Deads and Dead Alives were made, so the practical effects can go to a really high level, even for lower budget movies. So they're not really as up to that standard. So this is, of course, in that category you might have suspected. It looks like it's just shot on video. The acting is a lot out there. The script doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's get into it really quick. The basic idea of this, I'm not going to list all the actors' names because it's just too much for me to go through all the Japanese names. My brain might melt. The basic concept is you have kind of a zombie outbreak. We've had these before, a zombie outbreak in Japan. But the way this one works is it's only happening to teenage girls. And I think they had an age range like between, I don't know, 15 and 18 or 15 and 21. I forget what it was, but it's basically like teenage schoolgirl zombies that turn to zombies. And there's this weird thing. They have this thing in the few days before they turn into a zombie. They don't really talk about why they turn into a zombie. They just do. But before they turn into zombies, they have about a week where they become super duper happy and smiling a lot. And they call it near-death happiness. And when that happens, it has this effect on guys, especially, go figure, has this effect on guys and parents and family members that they are like extra drawn to these super happy girls in their lives. But then the girls, of course, turn into zombies and then they attack people and kill them. So that's a danger. There's also a thing called butterfly twinkle powder that is produced by them, by the zombies. I didn't quite ever understand exactly how this works, other than it's supposed to be this kind of weird byproduct. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of strange stuff in this. So there's that. There's an ad for this single hand like glove that's also a chainsaw, but they're very colorful and like pop, like J-pop colors, almost like you'd get for keychains or phone cases. But it's a chainsaw that you can use to chop up your loved one who's turned into a zombie. And there's a whole thing about how you have to chop them into 165 pieces exactly to get them to not be there anymore. They have a whole, they call it repeat kill. They send people out to go kill the zombies. They call it repeat kill. And I know you're probably getting your mind is probably bending. Like, what are you talking about, Bruce? And then they also have this thing where they also have this other thing. And it's one of those things where I would tell the plot to Eric and he hadn't seen the movie and he would just start not believing that I'm telling a thing that actually exists. They have a force they send out called the Romero something force, which basically obviously a nod to George Romero. And there's very, very strong nods to both the Evil Dead movies, which obviously the hand chainsaw, they even call it like the Ash something hand chainsaw or whatever, 2. And the Romero force, like it's this kind of paramilitary force that goes out. They're out to kill these zombies. And that's kind of your basic setup of this world. There's kind of several different plot lines, as you can call them. They're very loosely bound, I guess. It's very hard to keep track of things. Sometimes things just don't make any sense. One main plot line is you have this young man who he's like a puppeteer, and he seems like kind of a nerdy dude, and a super beautiful woman with a smiling near-death happiness. He always has this little chime, this little glass chime she's carrying. She's just standing there smiling creepily, and she introduces herself to him and says, hey, I will be. It's kind of a strange arrangement, right? It's like, I will be your calming presence and make your life happy, but you have to promise that when I die that you will, kill me. because it's much more important to be killed by someone who loves me and not by some strange Romero force. And that's kind of an ongoing theme of this is like, it's good to be killed by someone who loves you. And then there's a whole other subplot about this mad scientist. This is a very Day of the Dead. This mad scientist who is experimenting on the zombies, and I don't even remember exactly why he's experimenting on them, but there's a scene where he's like pulling a girl's head out of her body, zombie girl's head out of her body, and her spine is like snaking out, and he's like testing her spine. I think he's trying to make the butterfly powder stuff come out. I don't remember exactly. It makes no sense, but it's weird. There's the word again. There's another subplot about a guy, and he's going to this school for girls to try to, I think, kill the girl that he met earlier, that he promised to be like her brother, and she's got become zombified. It's kind of a mess, and it strangely kind of works. It's this kind of movie I usually hate as far as horror movies. I hate super duper low budget, super cheap looking, terribly acted, plot nonsensicalness. But there's some kind of a sweet goofiness to this movie where it almost falls into like a combination of gore, cheapo gore, and teen romance, which is somehow really endearing. And there is a level of creativity to it that I appreciate too, where it's just like it's kind of one of those movies where it's like we don't have any of the resources to pull off any of the stuff that we really want to do here, but we have all of the imagination. And even though it doesn't make sense, we're going to just try everything. And I really appreciate that kind of, can do filmmaking. Like, let's just do it. They're not being held back by all of those limitations, which they probably should have been held back by. They're just making the movie. And in that sense, I really appreciated it quite a bit. And then there's a finale to this, kind of a prologue, narrator prologue, that's just bonkers. The place that it goes at the final, like 5 minute, kind of almost like I said, a voiceover, like where is this world like leading is crazy, and the implications it has is crazy, and the fact that could have been a movie too, it just shows you that they had so many ideas. And I really just love the fact that you can have a movie like this so full of ideas, and you can have this $250 million big budget CGI monstrosity that has like no new ideas. So I give something like this like a million times more credit. Now, is it the most fun to watch in the world? No, but it is much more sparking to my brain than another Marvel movie retread, the 10th version of Captain America or whatever it is, when you're just like so bored of the formula and it's so much the same old same. I can't give this a 5 stars, that's for sure. But I can recommend it to people with just the right attitude. Most people, if you recommend it to them, they'll look at this and go like, "What is wrong with you? Why would you ever suggest something so terrible?" But for the people who really like those kind of crazy, like Meet the Feebles, if you watch movies like Meet the Feebles or Bad Taste by Peter Jackson, early movies, and you're like, yeah, this might be a movie you might give a try to. I'm gonna go 3.5 stars. I think I am. It's not really a 3 star banger because it's not any category that you could even suggest to a certain type of person, really. It's such its own weird thing. But I liked it in a weird way. So I'm gonna say 3.5 stars. I think that's fair. Okay, final recommendation. This is a movie that got several awards, a lot of awards last year. I know it got nominated for, I think, 3 Academy Awards. I don't think it won any. If it had a chance for any, it probably would have been for Best Actor. And once again, that was a uphill climb against the Brody machine. Although I don't think they used any AI for the acting in this movie. Once again, people say like, that's just like auto-tuning a voice. It's like, well, okay, just don't give singing awards to people who auto-tune. They're not the best singers. You can say you love their albums. I think that's totally fair, but they're not the best singers if they have to auto-tune. Just like they're not the best actors if you have to use AI for their performance. I'm pretty sure that Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing did not use any AI for his performance. If I'm wrong, I will say I'm sorry, but I don't think he did. Anyway, as you might guess, I'm going to talk about Sing Sing, which is now on Max, A24 release. If you look at IMDb, it says 2023, That's garbage. It barely got a theatrical release last year in 2024. That's why no one has seen it until it finally comes out on streaming, like myself, unless you are in one of the areas that has like a vast array of theaters that give you all these really small, like, art house movies. If you're in most of America, you don't get any access to a movie like Sing Sing until it comes out digitally, either for rent or sale, and then eventually on a streaming service. So it is now on Max. Directed by Greg Quidar, starring Coleman Domingo. Once again, he's the most notable name in this movie. Divine G is his character. You also have Sean San Jose playing Mike. You have Clarence Macklin, who also goes by Clarence, I think, Divine Eye Macklin. He plays Divine Eye, which I believe he's kind of the character in some ways. And then Paul Racy, which you might remember him from Sound of Metal. He plays almost a similar type of character in here. He plays Brent. And there's a whole bunch of other people that basically play themselves. And that is important to know because this is a movie that takes place almost solely in Sing Sing prison. And it's about a kind of a program in there for certain inmates to put on acting, put on plays, act. And it almost becomes like a therapy, almost like a group therapy to do acting and therapy somewhat for the people too, like that they can watch these plays that are created by, not the plays themselves might not be created. They might be doing a famous play like a Hamlet or something, but the other inmates can watch these plays being put on and performed by fellow inmates, and it kind of brings an escape for them. And then the actors themselves, this becomes, like I said, almost like a group therapy, a way for them to not only kind of escape their obvious situation, but to be forced to actually kind of deal with emotions and deal with their persona themselves, like how they are in the world, and also have to really get deep with other people. When they're performing across from somebody and doing these roles, they have to actually become kind of vulnerable in a way that is probably not very available in the everyday life in a lot of prisons. I mean, at least not as a way that can be acceptable. I'm sure there's a lot of stigma against kind of that kind of emotion and that kind of vulnerability within a prison as well. Look as weak and all this kind of stuff. But within that acting setting, they can kind of get away with it because they know they're putting on this play and everyone else knows they're putting on this play. So there's not a level of judgment there. So the basic story though is that you've got Divine G. He's kind of Coleman Domingo, and he's kind of the de facto, like, helped kind of create this thing. He kind of leads it, but he doesn't totally lead it. He's kind of a mentor figure. He's been there for a long time, and you also kind of understand as he goes along that he is also kind of a jailhouse lawyer type, right? He's constantly writing up people's appeals, writing up people's clemency, hearings. He's doing a lot of things to help other inmates try to eventually get parole, and as well as working on that for himself. So he gets a level of respect and kind of a level from other inmates just for that. He's kind of got his own kind of status. And he's also a very kind of a positive figure in a lot of ways. To some point, that's even looked askance on by other inmates, right? For example, uh, Divine Eye. Divine Eye is, the classic kind of a stereotypical kind of character, right? He's kind of the gangster type, right? He's in his world, he's top dog. People are scared of him. He's gonna kind of run around and threaten the newer guys, make sure that they're doing what he wants them to do. He's that kind of dude, right? But for whatever reason, he's kind of interested in this acting troupe. So he's like the new guy in there. And that's kind of your through line for this movie, right? You have the new tough guy who's definitely going to be looking kind of sideways at this and kind of like he can't be that vulnerable. He's got to kind of keep that tough exterior, but he's kind of interested in this acting group. How does he interact with this group and not have total, suspicion or, aggression back to them? How is he going to deal with this? And that's kind of the through line. And really between those two, between divine, so to both have divine, right? Divine G and divine I, how are they going to interact and how are they going to come through the other end of this experience together? And after that, there is plot, but really it's about human interaction. And that's, of course, the key of this movie. It's about looking at the mass incarceration system as a huge collection of people. And I understand some of these people, and they don't shy away from it. These people have done terrible things to other people, and there needs to be some retribution for that. But are we using revenge, and are we looking for are we looking for retribution? Are we looking for payback? Or are we looking for a way to have a person pay a sentence for doing these bad things, but then hopefully come out the other side as better human beings? Is that our goal? Or do we just want to lock people away and let them rot forever? I mean, what is our goal? I think right now in the world, we are in a world where revenge and cruelty and immovability and the feeling of giving less freedom and giving less points for people to show us that they were or weren't guilty. We just look to immediately convict and immediately incarcerate and immediately punish and immediately, just in every way possible right now, the world just wants to abuse anyone they think is the other or weaker or not with the attitude that they want to have. That person just deserves derision and violence. And I think in a lot of ways that just is directly represented in the prison systems right now. That's my political standpoint. Sorry about that, guys. So this movie, I think, agrees with that as far as that is the way it is being treated. And they disagree with that as the way it should be treated. And they're showing things like this very, very human points of view of a world within a prison and the people there. And that is the important thing about this movie, is the people and the interactions. And I think in that sense, it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. And a lot of people have reacted similarly. It's kind of a shame that it didn't get more promotion. I'm not sure why it didn't get more promotion. It feels like it's kind of dropped the ball, because usually A24 is pretty good about getting stuff out there. And this seems like a shoe-in for a lot more awards, Oscar buzz than it got. And I feel like it could have easily been a pretty high up front runner. I mean, it did get some, but I just feel like it kind of fell by the wayside in a way that it probably shouldn't have. The one thing that's kind of interesting too in this movie, and it's been noted by anyone who reviews it, of course, is nearly everybody in this movie is, not everybody, but almost everybody are actual former inmates that were involved in that program. So the people you see, almost every peripheral character, almost all of them were who they were in the movie, as far as how they are, how they were, what their names were, how they acted, what they look like. That's them. And it's one of those movies at the end, a lot of times at the end of a movie that's like a biopic, at the end they'll have all the photos of the real people. Well, here it's more just like you have the cast at the end where it says like, Divine G, Coleman Domingo. It'll kind of flash the photos and show their name and who did it, who they played. And once you get past the first two or three kind of actors, people, it just says, blank as himself, and blank as himself, blank as himself, blank as himself, and just all these people that you just watched, who were absolutely equally effective as actors in this movie, were just themselves. And that also is just kind of proof of concept, proof that what they were doing and what they are doing, I guess, maybe it hasn't been killed by now. It seems like the kind of thing that Doge would immediately destroy. Oh, we're spending our tax money to let, hardened criminals act? What a waste of money. That's exactly what the, kind of response of the world is right now. It's a very fine movie. It is by far worth your time. How do you describe it? The kind of the feeling you get watching Cuckoo's Nest. I think it works very similar to that. It's this kind of combination of frustration, of being imprisoned, and kind of this group therapy, self-therapy between people who are trapped. And I think that's very strong in Cuckoo's Nest, and I think it's very strong here. The difference in Cuckoo's Nest is much more about authority and the injustice of authority, whereas in this movie, it's much more the injustice is baked in. The authority is baked in. It's a given. That is just the world we're in Sing Sing. And really the point of this movie is, how do you maintain your humanity and how do you survive within that system? You aren't changing that system. There's nothing you're going to do to change that. You're not going to tear up the thing and throw it through the window and run out across the field. It might be a spoiler for some people if they know what I'm talking about. You're not going to get out for a day and play basketball or get a boat ride. You're going to maybe get to go out to the yard, and you're going to maybe get to sit up against the grass and the tree that's out in the yard and look at the water on the other side of the fence. But really, how are you going to maintain your sanity and your humanity within that system? And that is what this movie's all about. And it's very good at doing that. I'm going to go 5 stars in this. I don't know how I can go less. It's a fantastic movie. So good, interesting movie this week. Even though there's not a lot of movies, I think I gave you 3 interesting options. One very hard to access with the Tracy's, which, by the way, I didn't mention that. Tracy's are what they call the zombies, Tracy's. But you can definitely access Sing Sing like tonight, and you could start there and then work towards the other stuff. All right, guys, we'll see you next week with some brand new movies. I should have a lot more for you for the weekly podcast. Thanks for listening.